to begin. Good morning and welcome to the forum at All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church in Kansas City. I'm Spencer Graves and a member of the Forum Committee. Since 1943, this forum has provided a platform for discussion of significant issues in the contemporary world. We ask our speakers to present for roughly 35 minutes, after which we will take a collection and then open the floor to questions and answers. This program is live streamed on YouTube, where viewers who are logged in should be able to post their questions in the chat. George will monitor these questions and ask them for the speakers, ask them of the speakers on your behalf. Last year and again this year, I suggested to the Forum Committee that we should invite representatives of our two local leagues of women voters to talk with us about what they think are the most important issues facing our democracy in the greater Kansas City area today. Both last year and this, the Forum Committee agreed, as did presidents of our two local leagues. Accordingly, we are blessed this morning to hear from Calvert and Connie Taylor. Ann is president of the League of Women Voters of Kansas City, Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties, Missouri. Connie is a co-president of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, Kansas. And by the way, the League of Women Voters was founded in 1920, over 100 years ago, on Valentine's Day, by Carrie Chapman Catt and other women suffrage leaders after the U.S. Congress had approved the 19th Amendment guaranteeing women's suffrage, but 6 months before it was actually ratified and certified as part of the U.S. Constitution. I've asked them to tell our audience, including our YouTube Live and KKFI audiences, what they think are the most important issues confronting the voters here today. The title for this talk is Coming Down the Pike, What Legislation Will We See in 2024? Ann? Connie?
Thank you, Spencer. And Spencer gave you just a little bit of history. He told you that the league was founded in 1920. The Missouri League was actually founded the year before in 1919. So we predate just by a few months the founding of the full league. And Johnson County, um, the babies on our baby sisters on the other side, were founded in 1952. We are the League of Women Voters, but we have had men as members since 1974. Yep, I see some hands in the audience today that we have some members here. I remember when my father joined the league in 1974, and I remember the debate over changing the name or not changing the name. And the men in the league chapter that I grew up in, that my mom was very involved in, were adamant that they not change the name, that it stay the League of Women Voters. So I don't know if that was the debate across the country, but we did decide to keep the name. Um, we have we have leagues in actually we used to have independent leagues in Independence, Raytown, and Eastern Jackson County, but they consolidated in 2020 or 2004 as LWV Kansas City, Jackson, Clay, and Platte counties. We also serve informally Cass County as well.
The league is a nonpartisan organization, meaning we do not endorse or oppose any political party or candidate. We do encourage informed and active participation in our government. We do encourage, um, we do that through our programs on the Johnson County side, educating voters on important issues. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we also are fully committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, not just in principle, but in the practice that we have. So, just to talk to you a little bit about some voter engagement things that we do. We're in high schools, we're at colleges, including community college. We do a lot of community events. We'll do tables, um, reminding people to register to vote or just collaborating with them. We're in senior centers, and we're also at naturalization ceremonies.
And we do many of the same kinds of events. Thank you. There we go. I don't think so. All right. We do many of the same kind of events with voter registration across the city. There was a law that passed last year that made it difficult for us to register voters. It was HB 1878, and it required us to register with the Secretary of State if we were going to if we were going to assist more than 10 people in voting. However, League of Women Voters of Missouri, along with the ACLU, I believe, we sued. And so there's currently a stay. And so when that happens, the law reverts back to the old law. And so it is no longer the case that we have to be registered with the Secretary of State. So we can now, um, anyone can help anyone else register to vote on a postcard registration. So that's, we did not stop registering voters. We filled out the paperwork and we grumpily took it to the Secretary of State en masse a year and a half ago, and so we're back out registering voters.
Unfortunately, Kansas is not. We did challenge our law, but we are still going to events to remind people, hey, are you registered to vote? Is your registration up to date? Our two lawsuits are currently at the Kansas Supreme Court. One, we're waiting for the opinion. Another one was appealed, and so we're back to the Kansas Supreme Court. So some of our voter information things that we do are nonpartisan candidate forums. What we're doing lately, though, is meet and greets, and that seems to draw both parties to these events. They actually like them. They have more one-on-one conversations with the voters. We do that in partnership with our Johnson County Library System. And then we've been doing the project with the Girl Scouts called Voter Girl, and they get a badge, and they actually vote. They bring a machine in, and they vote on things. We're actually trying to get that into the middle school program. Um, and even the high school level. So we really want to expand that opportunity. We also do an event called Souls to the Polls in Wyandotte County just to encourage people in low propensity areas in Wyandotte because they just don't go to the polls that often. So it's just weaving our cars through neighborhoods in Wyandotte County, just encouraging them to go to the polls. And of course, we have Vote for One.
All right, and we also on the Missouri side, and we're going to talk about the Kansas side and the Missouri side as you know differently because the voting laws are state by state. So while we work together and collaborate as much as we can, we kind of have to stay separate because of the laws. So we also on the Missouri side do nonpartisan candidate forums. We also have an election integrity project that we're trying to find ways that we can advocate for the safety of the people who are working at the polls. So if you're someone who goes and works as an election judge on election day, we want to make sure that you're safe, and we want to make sure that that there are ways that we can advocate for good laws to keep you safe. We also have a program, Ballot Measures Explained. We took that into the libraries last year, and this year we are actually producing a graphic novel to reach some younger people who are interested in graphic novels and might find a library lecture boring. Um, we have lots of social media, and then Vote for 411, of course.
So, in addition to all those nonpartisan candidate forums, what we do, we have monthly programs throughout the year, and these are our voter education programs. They're typically about current events. So this past year we had them on school funding. We really talked about the voucher program, the pros and cons of that. We just did a topic on the immigration crisis. We've actually got one coming up that people really come out to a program on what's on your ballot. And we're really encouraging vote local because this year is an election. Every year is an election year, and we're really stressing vote local. Our events are typically live streamed, and then they're available on YouTube. We did collaborate with other civic rights organizations like the NAACP. We'll do with ACLU, Loud Light, and we're also collaborating with a couple groups in Wyandotte. One of them is the Voter Network of Wyandotte County. We do media outreach. We're trying to get our name out there and encouraging people to attend our programs. We have a speakers bureau, and then we have observer corps where we'll go and make our presence known. Hey, there's a representative from the League of Women Voters, and they observe the happenings of county government, city government, and our school boards, and they write a report. These are the actions that these governing boards took. These are the things that were discussed, and people are free to look at that information. That's just part of the information that we pass along. So, what's coming up in the Kansas legislative session for 2024 is about elections, of course, taxes, water, special education, medical marijuana, maybe not, and mental health. And so there's a special committee meeting that's being held this coming week, and only certain people were invited to attend. We were not. However, the State League of Kansas did submit written testimony on it. They want to change the advance ballot deadline. Currently, if you have your ballot postmarked on election day and it takes 3-day grace period, they tried last year to eliminate that 3-day grace period. The governor vetoed, but they were not able to override that veto. So we expect them to bring this back up again. They want to remove drop boxes, and they want to, it's always about ballot harvesting. You can't take more than 10. You can't, they're even going to get to the point where you can't take somebody else to take somebody to the polls for them to vote. And then, of course, there's always, do the voting machines are they secure and are they safe? Um, that's always a bone of contention. So with taxes, they want to eliminate taxes. Well, that's great. Um, everybody wants to eliminate taxes. I don't like to pay taxes, but I realize the importance of paying them. They're really looking at Social Security tax and the marriage penalty specifically, and even taxing the benefits from your income from Social Security. They really want to reduce and eliminate income tax on retirement plans, and they're looking to repeal um, expired or unused tax provisions. So water, we need water. There's a shortage of water in Kansas, and the legislature continues to push the can down the road. They're not going to come up with new laws on anything about water conservation. So they're not going to recommend any new laws this legislative session. What they are looking at is getting more information on how to use um, a percentage, very small percentage, that 0.1% of sales and use taxes, um, and looking at a 4-cent water bottle fee. They think they can raise about $67.6 million for the next fiscal year. So special education is always a hot topic in Kansas. They don't fund special education the way that they need to. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Um, they're they just don't fund special education. There's a need, but they don't fund it. They're looking to increase to 92% statewide. They want to shift funding above the state constitutional requirement for special education. They want to amend the Kansas Special Education for Exceptional Children's Act, and they want to reestablish the Special Education Funding Task Force, as well as looking at changing the authorizing statute. So, medical marijuana, Kansas wants it, the legislature does not. The rumors out of the gate are that this is a non-starter issue. The committee still met to discuss, well, what does the legislature need to do? Well, let's identify things, but not act on them. On testing, licensing, fees, how is medical marijuana going to be used in jails and correctional facilities? How will lab testing be regulated? And how would they expunge marijuana convictions? Again, that's going to happen. We don't think. So mental health is a big issue, not just in Kansas, but throughout the world. And in Johnson County specifically, just to give you a little bit of Johnson County history, we were very instrumental in getting the Johnson County Mental Health um, organization up and running. But statewide, um, the the legislature is looking at releasing $15 million that's been appropriated for the Department of Aging and Disability, um, that would open up a new state hospital. Now, several years ago, lots of state hospitals closed, lots of mental health facilities closed. This would open up one again. And it would allocate $40 million to open a new 50-bed facility in Sedgwick County, which is Wichita. Great. We love Wichita. So, to track some of the legislation, these are just screenshots that I took. You can go by whether it's the House or the Senate committee. Go to that particular committee, and then you can see, um, click on any bill that they have proposed, and it'll take you who originated the bill, where it is in the committee. You can read the bill in its original form and then whatever amendments they make. Or you can go directly to the bill page, and I'll track it that way. So I encourage, if you're on the Kansas, how many of you are on the Kansas side? Oh, excellent. Welcome. I encourage you to keep track of the bills that you're mostly interested in and write your legislators, write committee, provide that written testimony. Be ready to go. Just be ready to go.
Thank you. Okay, on the Missouri side, you can click or thank you. We think that some of the things that are coming up in the 2024 session include reproductive rights, citizen initiative petition process, voting rights, LGBTQ rights, and guns. So I'll talk a little bit about each one of those. There is a ballot proposal that has been written, that is out there. It is let's see if I can find if I have these in the right order. Okay, I'll have to go off my notes are no are no good. But it is a proposal to amend the Constitution to allow for reproductive rights for women. That proposal then, what they have to do is write a fiscal statement about it, and so that fiscal statement has been fought over in the courts. And after that was resolved, then the language of the ballot was fought over in the courts, and that is, I believe, as yet unresolved. And then there's been a third challenge to that ballot initiative um, that was brought by two members of the Missouri House. And so there's a lot of wrangling about this bill the uh, in the courts and also in the court of the public press. And so it's not clear what's going to happen with that bill, but we anticipate that there will be, or not with the bill, with the amendment. So, but we do believe that it will make it onto the ballot in some form. It may be written in a way that includes some deceptive language. That's something that happens fairly commonly. So one of the things that we will do as the league is that we will try to explain that language. That's what our program last year was, ballots, measures explained. We will do that again this year, I would anticipate, once we find out what the actual ballot language is. So that's one of the, that's one of the fights that we see coming. And related to that is the Citizens Initiative petition. So the way that it works in Missouri, we get to amend our constitution in Missouri, and there are a couple of different ways. There are three ways actually that constitution gets amended. Regularly, we have we vote to have a constitutional convention where the Constitution, Missouri State Constitution says we have to reconsider whether we want to keep this Constitution every so many years. We just had that happen. We said, no, we don't want to rewrite it. And most people didn't even know that happened. But the two most common ways that we change our Constitution is that a citizens group or an individual write a petition and circulate it, get signatures. They want to change the law. They get enough signatures. It goes to a vote to the public. And in Missouri, we decide yes or no by 50% of the population plus one vote. And if it gets 50% yes plus one vote, then it's passed and we amend our constitution. The other way that an amendment can be proposed for the Constitution is that the legislature proposes it, and they have the same threshold, 50% plus one. So there were many bills that were proposed last session, including HCS HJR 43, which would change the threshold to pass a petition, an initiative, I'm sorry, to pass an amendment. So instead of it being 50% plus one vote, it would be 60%. That's an that's an impossible bar to make. I mean, none of the I think maybe one of the amendments in the history of Missouri would have passed with that. I'm not even sure if I'm right about that. But we don't think that that's reasonable at all. It's taking away the rights of you to change your amendment, to change your constitution, to decide how you want the laws to work in your state. Um, there were other laws that were proposed last session, like SJR 28, which not only raised the threshold, but also said you have to get more signatures from more counties. Currently, if there's a certain number of counties, you have to have a certain percentage of counties that are participating, and they raise the threshold for that as well. So the current legislature is doing a lot to try and make it harder for regular citizens to change the law. And we believe in a participatory democracy. So while we don't endorse candidates and we don't endorse or oppose parties, we do take stands on issues. And this is an issue that we've taken a stand on. And so we believe in the right for citizens to bring initiative petitions and for the threshold to be reasonable. So we see that as a ongoing fight for us. Also in voting rights, So related, last year, measures or one of the bills that was proposed was HB 391, which would prevent the courts from editing ballot language. So this is related to the last one as well. So what happens? It happened with Clean Missouri and Dirty Missouri is that we'll get a ballot language that um, that's written in a deceptive way, and there'll be a lawsuit, and then the courts will rewrite that language. So this was a bill that said, no, no, whatever the deceptive language is, we're going to keep that. We're not going to allow the court to edit it and make it clearer for the public, so that the public makes an informed, educated decision. They also proposed a bill that would make it easier for people to be removed from the rolls. And so people might be removed from the rolls and not realize that they're removed from the rolls. We've actually been recommending for the last 2 years that you vote in every single election and that you check before you vote, at least 2 weeks before you vote. Just double check and make sure that you're still registered. Make sure that everything's okay. Unfortunately, we have to be a little bit active in protecting our right to vote now. In the past, it was, it was a given that you register, you stay registered. But now you have to actively protect that right to vote. And one of the ways that you can do that is to vote in every single election, even the boring ones, even the ones where there are just a couple of tax questions, or you're just voting for, one local candidate. You have to vote in each election. We have also seen some really ugly LGBTQ bills that were proposed last year and some that were passed. Actually, these bills did pass last year. The ones that I talked about before did not pass. And I'm going to back up you don't have to back up the slide, but I'm going to back up just a second to say that they most the bills that did not pass last year, the voting rights and the the citizens initiative bills didn't pass, mostly because there was so much fighting between the legislators. So I would love to say that we had an influence, because I do think we have an influence, but unfortunately, it wasn't them listening to us. It was some fighting among the ranks. And so that's one of the reasons we predict that these will come up again and again. These bills are referred to as zombie bills that just won't die. The ones, particularly the attacks on the Citizens Initiative petition, we've seen those year after year for several years now. But back to LGBTQ. So last year, a bill, it's got a really long name with a bunch of letters and numbers, but that's all one bill because it was cobbled together from a bunch of different bills. Um, Said that no healthcare provider shall knowingly provide gender transition surgeries to any minor, and that they also can't provide um, what they call cross-sex hormones or puberty blocking drugs to a minor for a gender transition. So that's until 2027 that that ban on care for transgender youth is in place. So that's something that will come up again because they'll want to renew that, I'm sure. And these attacks on our LGBTQ, our particularly our transgender youth, are I think really mean spirited and targeted to so few people, so few young people and our most vulnerable community members. And so that's something that we'll be kind of standing up against at the league. And then finally, guns. This one did not pass, but there was a proposed law last year that would allow concealed carry on public transportation, because that's what we need, are guns on buses. So we predict that will come back, and that we of course oppose guns on buses at the league. So these are the legislative fights that we see coming down the pike. So where do you find information about the legislation that's going on in Missouri? You can go to the Missouri House website, which is house.mo.gov. You can go to the Missouri Senate website, which is senate.mo.gov. You can also go to the League of Women Voters of Kansas City, Jackson, Clay, Platte County, which is lwvkc.org. You can go to our website and click on the legislative tracking page. We have a whole team of people who track legislation, and then we turn it around and create legislative alerts, and we send them out via email. I should have next year. I'll have a slide with a sample of what that looks like. But they're very easy to read. They tell you what the bill number is. They tell you whether the league opposes or supports the bill. And they tell you just a brief description of the bill and then some talking points. So if you would like to, as Connie said, email your senator or your representative and weigh in or submit testimony, and then we also have a place where you can just click right there and it will go to the congressional lookup on the Missouri, the either house.mo.gov or the Senate's page, so that you can type in your address and find out who your representative is, and you can submit or if it's testimony, we'll click to the testimony page for that bill. So we make it as easy as we can for you to participate, for you to submit testimony, for you to weigh in. We hope that you'll agree with us, but of course, the beauty of a vibrant democracy is that you get to decide for yourself. So we give you as much information as we can, and then we let you decide for yourself. We do tell you if we've taken a stand, so we hope you'll come. We also have a podcast, and it's once a week during the legislative session. It's called the Missouri League of Women Voters Missouri Legislative Update. And you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. And in the notes, the show notes, we have all those links so that you can just click. If you're listening to it on your phone, on your walk, you can just click it and then go and submit testimony while you're walking the dog. If you're, you know, if you're coordinated enough to not drop your phone, which I would not be. Um, so I encourage you, we have a spot on our website where you can sign up for our newsletter. If you sign up for the newsletter, you will get our weekly legislative alert, and you'll see what legislation is coming up that next week that we're tracking. So I kind of already talked about this, but we do hope that you will get involved, that you will email your representatives and your senators, that you'll follow us on social media. That's one of the best ways to reach young people is to engage in social media. And the more people engage with the social media, commenting, liking, the more it goes out, the more the algorithm sees that and spreads the message. So we encourage you to follow us on social media. We're LWVKC on all of the social media platforms. Um, yeah.
We are also on social media, lwvjoco.org. Um, so Vote 411 is a great way to find out what issues are coming up on your ballot, but also, more importantly, the races that you'll see on your ballot and who's running for that particular office. There's also on the Kansas side a couple of questions that we ask the candidates to answer. Those answers are also on 411, Vote 411. And if your particular candidate that's on there for your particular municipality or school district, I encourage you to say, "Hey, candidate, please answer the Vote 411 so that I can know more about you." That's always a way to encourage them. And then again, join all our social medias. Follow us. Um, we do not have a podcast yet. But we are also on Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever it is this week, Instagram, and YouTube. So again, we live stream and put our programs up on YouTube.
We'll teach you how to do a podcast. All right. So, do we have any questions? Oh, you moderate the questions. I forget.
Right.
Forgive me.
So before we go to the questions, I just a reminder: each week's program is broadcasted on KKFI after some delay. Today's show will likely air on October 5th, Thursday at noon to 1 p.m. I believe later in October the time is changing, and so we can thank KKFI for their support of the forum. Um, and speaking of support, we need to briefly pause to take a collection, and George will bring the collection plate up here. And um, okay, and so I have 4 or 5 rules that I need to enunciate for the questioners. Number one, come to the microphone to ask your question. Speak clearly into the microphone. We've had some problems in recent forums where people were getting too close and swallowing the microphone, or they were standing too far away and the microphone didn't hear properly. Um, one question per person, please, until everyone has had an opportunity to ask a question. And please, no speeches. You may have something very interesting to say, but we'd rather hear what our guests have to say in response to questions. So let's have a question here. And stand right, see, straddling the X.
Morning. I'm sorry I missed part of it. In fact, thank you, Connie, for being here. My question on the 411 on the Kansas side is, do you know at this point whether in the local races coming up, you have gotten answers from most of the candidates or not? And of course, I'm in Roland Park for a few more months, but
I don't know the specifics. I think in Olathe, I know that doesn't help you in Roland Park, but I think there were only like 3 questions that they asked, so I'm not sure, but double check.
I'll
Yeah,
check with my
check it.
candidates this afternoon.
Check. And if they're not, reach out to those candidates and say, "Hey, fill that out," so that
Will.
you're informed. All right.
Thank
Thanks, Cal. Good to see you.
And if I can add that those responses and all that information for each election is live by 2 weeks before the election.
Good morning. Hi, I'm a fellow leaguer, and you know that. But I think it'd be helpful to explain to our audience how, when the league takes a position for or against an issue, it's based upon a position that's studied. You might do a little brief description of the extent of a study, and then secondly, I think it'd be helpful to make it clear that a member does not have to agree with the league's position, just can't speak publicly. Or you might address that too as you talk.
Right. So there are positions on 3 different levels. There's the U.S. has a position, the state would have a position, and then the local league could have a position. And it could just be as simple as saying, we agree with the state, we agree with national. I can tell you what's happening on the Kansas side. I just recently chaired the position update on redistricting. That took a good year, year and a half to get totally completed from start to finish approval at our convention. But there's another one that's taking place on election methods, and that's really a 2-year study. Um, and leaguers participate, they ask questions, they go research, and then they bring it to the state league for approval, and then they kind of go out to actually the state board for approval. Then they go out to each local league to vote on whether they concur or consensus, depending on what's going on. And then it's voted by the membership at the local convention. That's probably how you guys do it too. And then, yeah, w- local um, local members are free to disagree. We're just telling you that our position comes from research that we've done, going out to different organizations, different documentation. We thoroughly research pros, the cons, and we take a position, and that's where our advocacy comes from, um, national, state, local.
Yeah, just one more thing to add that we don't actually advocate if we don't have a position. So sometimes, like on the Missouri side, we don't have a ton of positions about education that apply to charter schools and what's going on right now in charter schools. So we don't tell our members, that we oppose or support a particular position on um, we don't tell them what to say when they call their representative. So we will still put out information about those issues or the pending legislation, but if we don't have a position, we won't ask our members to for a yes or no.
It occurred to me that the use of issue referendums is much greater in Missouri than it is in Kansas. We did have one last year on the abortion issue, but that came out of the legislature. So, could you explain, especially in Kansas, where I'm from, when and how issue referendums are used, and also how that differs from Missouri?
Sure. So on Missouri, you have the benefit of citizen-initiated referendums. Kansas does not. Any kind of issue referendum for the state constitution has to come out of the legislature.
Really?
Yes, it comes from the legislature. So if they're opposed to anything, it's not gonna happen. You just need different legislators that agree with you on that particular issue to get it through.
Is there a way to have a referendum to get rid of that law?
Um, there is a way. It's to elect a different legislator. And I'm not telling you which one that is or the party that they're affiliated with because we do not endorse candidates or parties.
And I do want to say that that is one of the biggest fights that we'll have this year, to protect our citizen initiative petition process. That's really important to us.
Um, this is directed to Anne. Um, I okay. My question is directed to Anne Calvert. Uh, let's say that the league has a position on such things, uh, regressive taxes. I know that the league and overall nationally, at state level, et cetera, is opposed to regressive taxes. Let's say there's going a proposal for a large regressive, what we view as a regressive tax. What are the vehicles that you use to make the league's position known? And as opposed to just explaining what the tax is about. Uh, how do you interact with the media? How do you interact with community groups? Because I know you are an activist organization,
Mhm.
not just passive in explaining.
Yep, that's a great question. So we have sort of two channels. We have education and we have advocacy. And we think it's important that they are a little bit separate, um, because when we are educating, it's, after the fact, and we want to make sure that everyone has all the information that they need. And we have a voter education committee that handles voter education events and producing voter education materials. And the the information that comes out of that committee is we walk right down the middle on with that information. Then we have an advocacy group. We have our legislative action team, and that group does advocate. And so that group does inform both our members and the public about the positions that the league has. And so we will advocate, and that is a different beast. So, for example, we predict a fight over the Citizens Initiative petition. So we will have people going out into the community to inform the public what is an initiative, a citizens initiative petition. How is it different from the legislative initiative petition? How do we how does that come to be? What are the things that are on this ballot this year? And that will be without us talking about our position. But we will also have a campaign where we try to sway voters to save the initiative petition process, to vote against whatever is happening. I mean, we don't know how the legislature will if it'll be um, an an amendment that they propose, or if it'll be just laws that they enact that restrict our right to our initiative petition. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we're ready for an advocacy campaign to try and sway voters. So we have two separate channels and two separate committees. And so that's a really good question. And it's something we've been discussing a lot in the last year or two. How do we approach that? Because we are we're well regarded as a national organization. And one of the reasons we're well regarded is because we are nonpartisan and because we do not endorse candidates. And in this time of such polarization, to be trusted is a really valuable thing. And I think one of the only ways that we can get people to truly listen and maybe consider the facts in a calm and rational way.
Just to add to what Anne said, we also do letters to the editor. We encourage our members um, to echo our message. We will also do op-eds. Social media is probably the biggest thing that we have. Um, Last year for our reproductive right issue that we were against the value of them both. We had contact with the voters. We went door knocking. We were part of a coalition and we knocked doors and we made phone calls. And to kind of give you an idea, we are following that campaign up with writing 2,000 postcards to those first time voters from last year. So we want to reach those young people to vote in the election. That this election is just as important as the one before and the one that will come from next year.
Um, in all these ballot issues, there's always the term dog whistles that come up, and in your questions to the legislature, is it possible to use that technique to ask them if they believe the Earth is only 5,000 years old, or they believe in evolution as one of your questions?
In in the vote 411 questions,
Yes,
you mean?
right.
Um, that's a committee level decision to what questions they ask, and we only ask two questions for each candidate, and
Okay.
so they're generally more general than that.
All right.
Yeah.
The YouTube listener here, Richard Thompson, he says, have there been any efforts to bring actual experts, psychologists, psychiatrists, etc., in to talk about gender affirming care for minors? Academics are generally for getting treatment. Anyway,
Has there been any effort to bring them into to the or to the legislative sessions, you mean?
that's
Sure
not
what he
clear in this
means.
question, but
I mean, because that's not something that we have researched
mhm.
um extensively. Um and I don't know who testified. I'm sure that there were some legislators who ask for experts to come and testify, and I'm sure on both sides of the aisle they had experts, or people they considered experts, come in and testify.
Hi again. I think it'd be helpful to discuss funding. Where do you get your money from? You know, think about the dues, donations, partnering with NAACP, ACLU, how money works in the
Sure,
league.
sure. So we're, as we mentioned or alluded to before, we are a national organization, we're a state organization, and we are a local organization. And our members pay dues. And though we have a sliding scale, so we don't want dues to be a barrier. So you can become a member of the league for very little cost. And then you can also donate generously to the league if you'd like. So, some of our income comes from our member fees. Lots of it comes from donations. We, in fact, just had a fundraising event earlier this week called Peace, Love, Vote. And we don't know yet what the numbers are, but we made some money from that. But for and then we also have some money invested, of course. But for us, it's mostly, I'd say it's about half donations at the local level. And then we get support from the state. We get some grants from the state. We also get support from the national organization. They provide us with resources and tools that we can use. We've got our next meeting is in October on a Saturday morning. I believe it's October 8th, but I'd have to look at my calendar. And we will have somebody from the national organization coming in to talk to us about how we can best advocate and about you know, what's on the radar for the National League. Because we talk so much about local, we sometimes forget that there's national stuff going on too. So that's where our funding comes in. We don't have enough money, though. We don't have enough money. The more money we have, the more we can print up, information about voter ID. We have a very strict voter ID law here in Missouri, and lots of people don't know that they have to have a current Missouri or federal government issued ID to vote in Missouri. That's a fairly new law, and so we spread that information in as many restaurants, gas stations. We even took that door to door as we possibly could, but that takes money. We've got to print it. We've got to buy those little door knocker thingies that hang on the door. Um, it takes money to print a graphic novel to engage younger voters. It takes money to pay for Vote 411. We don't get that for free. We get it subsidized, but not for free. So, yeah, good question.
Good question. Very similar on the Kansas side. Dues, donations, grants. Um, yes. So we never have enough, and we always have to decide which is more important. Do we do this event or do we do this event? Do we print this brochure? Do we print brochure? And do we print this brochure in Spanish or this brochure in Spanish? So
Oh yeah, that's probably. Yeah, I think she also was asking about our partnerships with ACLU, and there's a coalition in Missouri called the Missouri MOVPC, Missouri Voter Protection Coalition. And we have there are some attorneys involved with that coalition who do work pro bono. And so when we partner with ACLU, we are coming on as plaintiffs in those lawsuits, but most of the funding is actually through some lawyers who work for us pro bono. So we're really grateful to have that assistance.
Thank you for coming. And I'm going to follow up on the Spanish translation piece. And you may have addressed this earlier and I missed it, but what specific outreach do you have to Hispanic communities, and what percent of your material would you say has been translated into Spanish for outreach?
We've got, I don't know the exact numbers of where we go. Our DEI committee in Johnson County really leads that effort along with our voter information team and voter registration team for very, I don't like using the word targeted, very focused areas where that goes. It's going to schools. I know KCK, we're doing stuff in KCK particularly. But we'll also go to different organizations and say, here are the printed material. We're taking it to libraries and things like that. How much? Not nearly enough. I couldn't tell you how many we have, but our goal is to get, if we're taking it out into the community, it needs to be in Spanish as well.
Yeah, and on the Missouri side, we partner with Revolución Educativa, and so we have some volunteers in that organization that help us translate our lots of our printed materials and also our ballot measures explained program. We did one of those was translated live, and then there's a recording of that, and so that's been made available. So we work with them. The percentage of materials, I maybe to 20 to 25%, which is not good enough. But 2 years ago, we also translated some materials into Arabic, and we partnered with Canby Foods in Missouri. Canby Foods is an organization that puts fresh produce into uh, convenience stores in inner city neighborhoods, and they have big coolers like you would see at the grocery store um, with fresh produce that's reasonably priced. And so they allowed us to put on the side of their coolers packets full of information about voting and how to vote and what the new requirements were for voter ID. And so those we translated into Spanish and into Arabic. And we had about 5,000 total go out, and probably 20% of those were translated.
Following up on your comments for Missouri upcoming legislation, usually every year the budget is a big issue. And does the league look at the budget and identify issues in the budget debates?
The league does look at the budget. That's they do that more at the state level, and they also look at taxes at the state level. And so part of the newsletter that we send out once a week is a recap of what happened the week before that is written by our state leaders. And so there's more information about that. I am not as well versed in the budget and taxes as they are at the state level, but we do make that information available.
Is there a budget issue you expect to be big in Missouri this year?
I would have to give you an answer to that later because I would have to consult with the state league people.
That's very wonderful. I thank you very much for your time. I think our time has expired. If you were not able to ask questions, you please, our speakers have agreed that we will reconvene in the library for a less formal discussion on these issues. Join us again next week to hear Tony Casey and Heather Bradley Geary discuss solving Kansas City's housing crisis. And if you're not going to join us in the library, you're invited to stay for services in the Bragg Auditorium that begins at 10:45. Thank you very much.
And thank you for letting us come and talk.